cruel uncle auctioned her for mining debt. Until the cowboy won and freed her dreams, she had learned early that silence was safer than questions. The small mining town had raised her on dust, noise, and promises that never came true. Machines roared day and night at the edge of town, chewing into the earth like hungry beasts. People said the mines brought money, but she had never seen much of it. What she saw were tired faces, broken tools, and men who drank away their hope by nightfall. She lived in a narrow wooden house that leaned slightly to one side, as if even it was tired of standing. After her parents died in a mining accident years ago, her uncle became her guardian. On paper, that word sounded kind. In real life, it meant control. Her uncle was a hard man with restless eyes and a sharp temper. He talked big when others were around, boasting about future profits and lucky finds underground. At home, he complained, blamed, and demanded. He reminded her often that food cost money and space had value. She learned to make herself small, useful, and quiet. Each morning she rose before sunrise to sweep the floors, cook simple meals, and fetch water. She did not complain. Complaining only brought trouble. In the evenings, she sometimes sat by the small window, watching the sky turn orange and then dark. That was when she allowed herself to dream. She dreamed of learning, of leaving the town, of a life where her name meant more than his niece. Her mother had once told her that dreams were like seeds. "Hide them well," her mother had said softly, "until the soil is safe." Since her mother's death, those words stayed with her, but the soil around her was not safe. Her uncle's mining work had been failing for months. Each night, he returned home angrier than the last. He spoke loudly about bad luck, dishonest partners, and debts that refused to disappear. Names of lenders and mine owners filled the air like smoke. She listened from the kitchen doorway, her hands clenched around a chipped cup. One evening, his anger exploded. He slammed his fist onto the table so hard that the plates rattled. "They want their money," he growled. "They don't care how I get it." She froze. Her heart beat fast, though she did not know why yet. "They say if I don't pay soon, they'll take everything," he continued. "The house, the land, what little I have left." She swallowed and spoke carefully. Maybe there is another way." He turned toward her, eyes cold. "You don't understand how the world works," he snapped. "You eat my food, you live under my roof, you already owe me." That word "owe" hung heavy in the room. From that day on, things changed. He watched her more closely. When visitors came, he spoke about her as if she were not there. He mentioned her strength, her age, her ability to work. Each word made her uneasy. The town, too, began to feel different. Neighbors whispered when she passed. People looked at her with pity or curiosity. Once at the market, an older woman squeezed her hand and said, "Be strong, child." No explanation followed. At night, she lay awake listening to the wind slip through the cracks in the walls. Fear crept into her dreams. The seeds she had hidden began to tremble. The truth came to her not in a shout, but in a careless conversation. She was cleaning near the doorway when her uncle spoke to a man with dirt-stained boots and a rough laugh. They did not lower their voices. "It's settled then," the man said. "The auction will clear the debt." Her uncle nodded. "It has to." "And the girl?" the man asked. Her breath stopped. "She'll be included," her uncle replied. "Strong enough, young enough, someone will pay." The room spun. She felt the floor beneath her feet but could not feel her legs. Auction. Included. Pay. She stepped back quietly before they noticed her. Her hands shook as she pressed them against the wall. Her thoughts raced, but none of them made sense. She had heard of auctions before, of animals, tools, land. Never of people, never of herself. That night she did not sleep. She replayed every word, every look from the past weeks. The way her uncle spoke about her, the whispers in town. It all fit together now, forming a picture she wished she could tear apart. In the days that followed, she searched for hope. She thought of running, but she had no money and nowhere to go. The town was surrounded by long roads and empty land. She thought of asking for help, but who would listen? Her uncle was respected by some, feared by others. She was just a girl with no voice. Her uncle became calmer, almost cheerful. That frightened her more than his anger. He whistled while eating. He counted papers late at night. Once she saw him holding a folded notice, smiling to himself. She wanted to scream. Instead, she worked harder as if effort could change fate. On the morning of the auction, the sky was gray. The air felt heavy. Her uncle told her to dress neatly and follow him. His voice left no room for refusal. As they walked through town, she noticed how ordinary everything looked. Shops opened. People greeted one another. Life went on, unaware that her world was breaking. The auction site stood near the edge of town, close to the mines. Wooden platforms had been set up. Men gathered in small groups, talking quietly. She kept her eyes down, her heart pounding so loud she was sure others could hear it. Her uncle guided her forward like one might guide a tool to be sold. He did not look at her face. Shame burned inside her, but beneath it something else began to rise. A quiet strength. A refusal she had never allowed herself to feel before. She remembered her mother's voice. Hide the seeds until the soil is safe. Maybe this was not safe soil. But maybe the seeds did not need to die here either. As the auctioneer prepared to speak, she lifted her head slightly. She did not know what would happen next. She did not know who would stand in the crowd. All she knew was this: her life was more than a debt. And somewhere, beyond the dust and noise, her dreams were still waiting. The crowd grew thicker as more people arrived. Boots scraped against the dirt, and quiet voices mixed with the distant sound of mining machines. The wooden platform stood in the center, rough and unfinished, just like the town itself. She stood beside it, hands folded tightly in front of her, trying to keep them from shaking. Her uncle stayed close, his hand firm on her arm, not gentle, not cruel either. Just firm, like she was an object that might roll away if not held in place. He spoke to people who came near, his voice low and confident. He smiled in a way that made her stomach turn. She did not look at the faces in the crowd at first. She kept her eyes on the ground, counting the cracks in the dirt. Each breath felt heavy. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and old wood. Then the auctioneer stepped forward. He was a thin man with a loud voice, the kind that carried easily over noise. He cleared his throat and raised one hand. Slowly, the crowd grew quiet. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "We are here to settle an honest debt." Honest. The word felt sharp. Her uncle nodded as if this was all normal, all proper. The auctioneer spoke of the mining debt, of failed tunnels and borrowed money. The crowd listened with interest, some nodding, some whispering. This part was familiar to them. Debt was something everyone understood. Then the auctioneer's voice changed. "As part of this settlement," he continued, "work and service are included." Her heart pounded harder. He gestured toward her. "This young woman is strong and capable," he said. "She has lived and worked in this town all her life. The winning bid will take full responsibility." Responsibility. Another word that did not mean what it should. Murmurs spread through the crowd. She felt eyes on her now. Some were curious. Some were cold. Some looked away quickly, unable or unwilling to watch. The first bid came quickly. A man near the front raised his hand and called out a number. The auctioneer repeated it loudly. Another bid followed, then another. Each number felt like a stone added to her chest. She tried to breathe, but it was hard. She told herself not to cry. Crying would only make things worse. She would not give them that. She glanced at her uncle. He watched the bidding closely, his jaw tight, his eyes sharp. This was what he cared about. Numbers, not her fear, not her life. The crowd shifted as bids rose higher. Some men leaned together, whispering. Others studied her openly, as if judging her value. She felt smaller with every second. Then from the edge of the crowd, a new voice spoke. The bid was calm, clear, not loud but steady. The auctioneer paused and looked toward the speaker. People turned, surprised. A man stood slightly apart from the others near the back. She had not noticed him before. He wore a worn hat and a simple coat dusty from travel. His boots were scuffed, his posture relaxed but alert. He did not smile. He did not look eager. His eyes were focused, serious. The auctioneer called out the bid. It was higher than the last one. The crowd reacted. Some looked annoyed, others curious. The bidding continued, but something had changed. The energy shifted. The man at the back did not rush. He waited. When another bid was called, he answered again, calm and firm. She found herself watching him. He did not look at her like the others did. When his eyes met hers, there was no hunger, no judgment, just attention, as if he was seeing a person, not a prize. Her heart beat faster, not from fear this time, but from confusion. Why was he here? The numbers climbed. A few bidders dropped out, shaking their heads. One man muttered angrily and stepped away. The auctioneer wiped sweat from his brow. Her uncle's expression shifted from confidence to surprise, then to worry. He glanced back at the man in the hat, then at the auctioneer. Finally, only 2 bids remained, the cowboy and one other man near the front. The other man raised his hand again, shouting a higher number, his voice strained. The cowboy paused. The silence stretched. The crowd waited. Then he spoke again, naming a number higher than before. It was enough to make the auctioneer's eyes widen. The other man cursed under his breath and shook his head. He lowered his hand and stepped back. Going once, the auctioneer said. Her chest tightened. Going twice. Her uncle leaned forward slightly, already imagining relief. Sold. The sound of the hammer echoed in her ears. For a moment she could not move, could not think. The world seemed to tilt. The auctioneer announced the winner and motioned for the cowboy to come forward. Her uncle finally looked pleased. He released her arm and stepped toward the cowboy, already reaching for papers and shaking hands. "Good doing business," her uncle said with a forced smile. The cowboy did not take his hand. He walked past him instead and stopped in front of her. Up close she saw lines on his face, marks of sun and wind. His eyes were steady, kind, but serious. He removed his hat slowly, a sign of respect she had not expected. "You all right?" he asked quietly. No one had asked her that in a long time. She nodded because she did not trust her voice. The crowd whispered. This was not how things usually went. The cowboy turned to the auctioneer. "I'll settle the debt now," he said. Papers were brought out. Money exchanged hands. The uncle watched closely, his impatience clear. Then, before anyone could speak, the cowboy took the papers that tied her to the auction and tore them cleanly in half. Gasps filled the air. Her uncle shouted, "What are you doing?" The cowboy's voice was calm. "Ending this." He looked at the uncle, his eyes hard now. "The debt is paid, she's not part of it." "That's not how this works," the uncle snapped. "It is today," the cowboy replied. The auctioneer hesitated, then nodded slowly. The money had been paid, the agreement was finished. The uncle's face twisted with anger, but there was nothing he could do. The crowd watched, stunned. The cowboy turned back to her. "You don't owe me anything," he said clearly so everyone could hear. "You're free to choose what comes next." Free. The word felt unreal. She stood frozen, unsure what to do. Leaving her uncle meant leaving the only life she knew, even if it had been cruel. Staying meant losing herself forever. The cowboy waited. He did not rush her. He did not reach for her. She looked at her uncle one last time. He would not meet her eyes. Then she took a small step forward. The crowd slowly began to disperse, buzzing with talk. Some looked thoughtful, some ashamed, some impressed. She walked beside the cowboy, each step feeling strange and new. Fear still lived inside her, but it was no longer alone. Hope walked beside it now. As they left the auction grounds, she did not know where she was going. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time, the road ahead was not chosen for her. And that made all the difference. They walked away from the auction grounds without looking back. The noise faded behind them, replaced by the soft sound of boots on dirt and the distant wind moving across open land. She kept waiting for someone to stop them, to shout that a mistake had been made. No one did. Only when they were far enough away did she slow her steps. The cowboy noticed. He stopped too, giving her space. "We can rest here," he said. "No need to rush." She nodded, still unsure how to speak in this new quiet. Her body felt tense, like it had been holding fear for too long and did not know how to let it go. They sat near an old fence that leaned under the weight of time. The land stretched wide and empty, nothing like the crowded town she had known all her life. The sky seemed bigger out here. She hugged her arms around herself. "I don't know where to go," she said at last. Her voice sounded small, but it was hers. "That's all right," he replied. "You don't have to decide today." She looked at him then, really looked. He did not rush her. He did not tell her what she should do. That alone felt strange. "My name is Eli," he said after a moment. "In case you want to know." She hesitated, then gave her name. Saying it out loud felt important, like a small claim of herself. Eli nodded. "I've got a ranch a few hours from here. You're welcome to stay for a while, just until you figure things out." "For work?" she asked carefully. "For rest first," he said. "Work only if you choose." She studied his face, searching for hidden meaning. She had learned to do that early, but she saw nothing false there, only patience. "I don't have anything," she said. "No money, no clothes worth much." "You have yourself," he answered. "That's enough." The road to the ranch was long but quiet. They traveled slowly, giving her time to breathe and think. At first, she stayed silent, watching the land pass by. Fields opened and closed like pages in a book she had never read before. Eli did not fill the silence with questions. He spoke only when needed, pointing out a stream, warning her of uneven ground. His calm made it easier for her to relax, little by little. By the time the sun dipped lower, they reached the ranch. It was simple but strong, with a small house, a barn, and open land stretching beyond. Animals moved calmly, as if they trusted the place. She stood at the edge of the yard, unsure whether to step forward. "You can stay in the spare room," Eli said. "There's food inside." Clean water. She followed him into the house. The smell of wood and soap filled the air. It felt clean, cared for. He showed her the room and then stepped back. "I'll leave you be," he said. "Take your time." When the door closed, she sat on the bed and finally let out a long breath. Her hands shook as the weight of the day caught up with her. She had been so focused on surviving that she had not allowed herself to feel. Now, in safety, the feelings came. She cried quietly, not from sadness alone, but from release, from the shock of kindness, from the knowledge that her life had changed in ways she did not yet understand. That night, she slept deeply for the first time in years. The days that followed were slow and gentle. Eli kept his word. He did not ask for work right away. He showed her where food was kept, how to use the stove, where clean clothes were stored. He treated her like a guest, not a burden. She woke early out of habit, ready to work, but there was no one shouting at her. No list of demands waiting. At first, the freedom felt uncomfortable, like wearing shoes that did not quite fit. She helped anyway, choosing small tasks, feeding animals, sweeping the porch. Eli thanked her each time, which surprised her more than she expected. "You don't have to thank me," she said once. "I do," he replied simply. "Choice matters." That sentence stayed with her. They talked more as days passed, not about the auction, not about her uncle. Eli let her decide when and what to share. He spoke about the land, about weather, about mistakes he had made and lessons he had learned. She listened, absorbing his words like dry ground taking in rain. One evening, as the sky turned gold, she asked him why he had gone to the auction. He thought for a moment. "I heard what was happening," he said. "Didn't sit right with me." "That's all?" she asked. "That's enough," he replied. She nodded, understanding more than she said. Not everything needed a big reason. Sometimes doing the right thing was reason enough. As weeks passed, she felt herself changing. Her shoulders relaxed. Her voice grew steadier. She began to laugh softly at small things, surprised each time it happened. She learned new skills too, writing, fixing simple tools, caring for animals. Eli taught patiently, never raising his voice, never mocking mistakes. When she struggled, he reminded her that learning took time. So did healing. Some nights memories returned, the auction, the looks, the fear. When that happened, she sat outside and watched the stars, reminding herself where she was now. One night, Eli joined her quietly. They sat side by side, not speaking. "I don't know who I am without fear," she said suddenly. "That's something you get to discover," he replied. She smiled at that, a small smile but real. She began to think about her dreams again, education, travel, a life chosen, not forced. For the first time, those dreams felt possible, not foolish. One morning, she told Eli she wanted to learn more, to study, to see beyond the ranch. He listened carefully. "When you're ready," he said, "I'll help however I can." She realized then that freedom was not just being rescued. It was being supported while learning to stand on her own. The past still existed. It always would. But it no longer controlled her every step. She was no longer a debt, no longer an object. She was a person, standing at the start of a life that belonged to her. And that knowledge, quiet and steady, was stronger than fear had ever been. Time moved differently on the ranch. Days were shaped by sunrise and sunset instead of fear and orders. At first, she still woke before dawn, her body trained by years of habit. But now, when she opened her eyes, there was no tight feeling in her chest. No sharp voice calling her name. Only quiet. She began to notice small things she had never had time to see before. The way light touched the land in the early morning. The soft sounds animals made when they sensed food coming. The smell of clean air after a night breeze. These details slowly stitched her back together. Eli never pushed her. He noticed when she was ready for more and when she needed space. Some days she worked alongside him, learning how to mend fences, check water lines, and care for the animals. Other days she read old books he kept on a shelf by the window. The pages were worn, but the words opened new worlds. Reading was difficult at first. Her schooling had ended early. She felt slow, embarrassed by how much she did not know. When she told Eli this, expecting disappointment, he only smiled. "Everyone starts where they start," he said. "The only thing that matters is that you keep going." So she did. Each word she learned felt like reclaiming something that had been taken from her. Each small success built quiet confidence. She began to ask questions without fear. She began to speak more freely. Still, healing was not smooth. Some nights she dreamed of the auction, of voices calling numbers, of her uncle's cold face. She would wake with her heart racing, her hands shaking. On those nights, she sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, breathing slowly until the fear passed. Eli never asked about the dreams, but he always noticed when she looked tired. He would leave a cup of warm drink near her or suggest an easy day. His care was gentle, never heavy. As weeks turned into months, the town she had come from began to feel like a distant place. Not forgotten, but no longer close. She realized she could think about it without feeling trapped. One afternoon, a letter arrived. The paper was thin and official-looking. Eli handed it to her without comment. She stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Her hands trembled slightly. The letter spoke of her uncle. Word had spread about the auction, about the money, about what he had tried to do. People in town had turned against him. Lenders refused to work with him. Neighbors no longer trusted him. He was leaving the area, his reputation damaged beyond repair. She read the letter twice, then folded it carefully. She expected to feel joy, or anger, or relief. Instead, she felt calm. For so long, her life had been shaped by what he did. Now, his fall felt small compared to her growth. She realized that her freedom no longer depended on his punishment. That night, she sat with Eli by the fire. "I don't hate him," she said quietly. "I just don't want him to matter anymore." Eli nodded. "That's a kind of freedom too." With that weight lifted, her thoughts turned fully toward the future. She spoke more openly about her dreams. She wanted to study properly, to learn skills that would let her support herself anywhere. She wanted to travel to see places beyond dust and fences. She wanted a life shaped by choice. Eli listened carefully, as he always did. "There's a school in the next town," he said. "Not fancy, but solid. You could start there." The idea scared her. Leaving the ranch, even for a good reason, felt risky. Safety had become precious to her. "What if I fail?" she asked. "Then you learn," he said, "and you try again." They planned slowly, carefully, no rush. She would start with short trips, then longer ones. She would keep a place at the ranch while she adjusted. The first day she left for class, her stomach twisted with nerves. The town was bigger than she remembered, louder, busier. But this time she walked in with her head up. She sat in a classroom filled with people of different ages, all trying to learn something new. When she introduced herself, her voice shook only a little. As lessons passed, she realized something important. She was not behind. She was strong. Everything she had survived had taught her patience, focus, and resilience. She studied hard, asked questions, stayed late to practice. Slowly, confidence replaced doubt. Each evening she returned to the ranch tired but proud. Eli never asked about her grades. He asked how she felt. That mattered. One evening, as they watched the sunset, she said, "I don't need to stay forever." Eli smiled gently. "I know. But I'm grateful," she added, "for the time, for the chance." "You earned that chance," he replied. "I just opened a door." The idea of leaving no longer felt like escape. It felt like growth. She began saving money from small jobs she took on in town, teaching herself to manage what she earned, planning carefully, thinking ahead. She bought a notebook and wrote down goals, short ones, long ones. Some felt scary to write, others felt exciting. She noticed how different she was now. She laughed more, she stood straighter, she spoke with confidence. People listened. One afternoon, a classmate asked her about her past. She paused, then answered honestly but briefly. She did not feel the need to explain everything. Her story belonged to her. That realization felt powerful. The ranch remained her place of rest, but her world was expanding. She learned to balance independence with connection, strength with kindness, courage with patience. She and Eli talked less often now, but more deeply. Their bond was steady, built on respect, not need. As the seasons changed, she felt ready. One night she packed her bag slowly, carefully, not to run away but to step forward. She stood on the porch one last time, looking out at the land that had held her while she healed. She was not the girl who arrived here broken and afraid. She was someone who had learned to dream again, and to believe those dreams could come true. She left the ranch at sunrise. The sky was pale and wide, stretched open like a promise. Her bag rested against her shoulder, light but meaningful. Inside were clothes she had chosen herself, books she had earned, and the notebook filled with plans written in her own careful handwriting. Eli stood by the fence, hands resting on the worn wood. He did not try to stop her, he never had. "You'll be fine," he said. She nodded. "I know." They did not say much more. They did not need to. Some goodbyes were quiet because everything important had already been said. She took a few steps, then turned back. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing me." Eli smiled. "You always had something worth seeing." She walked on. Each step felt steady, not rushed, not afraid. The road ahead led to a town larger than any she had known. It buzzed with noise, movement, and opportunity. At first it felt overwhelming. So many people, so many choices. But instead of shrinking, she reminded herself of all she had already faced. This was different. This was chosen. She rented a small room near the school. It was simple, with one window and a narrow bed, but it was hers. The first night she sat on the floor and laughed softly at the emptiness. Not lonely emptiness, open emptiness. She filled her days with learning. Classes challenged her, but she welcomed the effort. When lessons were hard, she stayed late. When she failed, she tried again. She was no longer ashamed of learning slowly. Every step forward mattered. She worked part-time to support herself. The work was honest. The pay was fair. Each coin she earned carried pride. No one controlled her money. No one spoke over her choices. Sometimes people asked about her past. She answered simply, without fear. She had learned that her story did not need to shock to have value. It only needed truth. Weeks turned into months. Her confidence grew quietly. She learned to speak up in class, to disagree respectfully, to ask for help without feeling weak. She made friends who knew her not as a rumor or a burden, but as a person with ideas and strength. One evening, as she walked home under the glow of streetlights, she realized something had changed deep inside her. She was no longer measuring her worth by survival. She was building a future. She still thought of the ranch, of Eli. She wrote letters telling him about her studies, her work, her plans. His replies were short but warm. He never offered advice unless she asked. He trusted her. That trust mattered. There were moments when fear returned, when memories rose without warning, when doubt whispered that she did not belong in this new life. When that happened, she opened her notebook and reread her goals. She reminded herself how far she had come. One day, she received news from her old town. The mines were closing. People were moving away. The place that had once felt like the whole world was shrinking into the past. She felt no pull to return. Instead, she focused forward. She completed her studies, earned certificates, took on better work. Each achievement felt like placing another brick in a strong foundation. She learned to help others too. When she met people struggling, she listened. She did not try to save them. She offered support the way she had once been supported. She understood now that freedom could not be forced. It had to be chosen. Years passed. She stood one morning in front of a building with her name on the door. It was not grand, but it was real. A place built from effort, patience, and belief. She unlocked the door with steady hands. Inside, sunlight filled the room. She thought of the girl she had been, silent, afraid, treated like a problem to be solved. That girl felt distant now, but not forgotten. She honored her by living well. Later that day, Eli visited. He looked around the space with quiet approval. "You did good," he said. "So did you," she replied. They shared a simple meal and talked about small things, weather, work, life. There was comfort in how easy it felt. Before he left, she walked him to the door. "You know," she said, "I used to think freedom was something someone gave you." Eli nodded. "And now?" "Now I know it's something you grow into," she said. "With help, with choice." He smiled. "That sounds right." When he was gone, she stood alone in the doorway, watching the street move around her. People passed, each carrying their own stories, their own battles. She felt no fear. Her dreams were no longer hidden seeds. They were alive, growing, reaching toward the light. And this time the soil was safe.